Well, folks, you want to know why the Kamala Harris campaign is focusing in like a laser beam on single ladies, all the single ladies? The entire campaign is not just a Beyonce song, Freedom. It is also a Beyonce song, All the Single Ladies. You want to know why? We'll get to that in a moment. First, it's a Daily Wire Plus member. You get uncensored, unfiltered, ad-free shows, the latest breaking news, and more. Join the fight right now, dailywire.com/subscribe. So, last night, the Kamala Harris campaign, which, of course, we're supposed to believe is amazing at this. Like, they are incredible. The media switch in time from Kamala Harris, pretty unpopular, not very good at this, odd hand motions, smugness, arrogance, weird laugh, to, my God, she's unbelievable. She's like a reincarnation of Barack Obama, except with just unbelievable. That sort of switch in time has happened incredibly rapidly. And the Kamala Harris campaign is focusing in like a laser beam on single ladies. That is the absolute definition of her campaign. She's going to try to run up the gender gap to the highest levels ever seen in the history of American politics, not on the back of married women, but on the back of single ladies. That is the reason why you have seen the Democratic Party go so hard on the J.D. Vance cat lady comment. There's a reason for that. Demographically, it makes perfect sense. There's a fascinating piece from the American Enterprise Institute, circa 2023, by Samuel Abrams, who's a professor of politics at Sarah Lawrence College, and Joel Kotkin, executive director of the Urban Reform Institute. And here is what they say in terms of American politics. Quote, unmarried women without children have been moving toward the Democratic Party for several years, but the 2022 midterms may have been their electoral coming out party as they proved the chief break on the predicted Republican wave. While married men and women, as well as unmarried men, broke for the GOP, CNN exit polls found 68% of unmarried women voted for Democrats. That is, in fact, its own voter bloc. Those are percentages equivalent in their magnitude to what you would perceive as a giant self-interested voter bloc, single ladies. It is also the fact that the number of unmarried women in American society has dramatically increased over the course of the past several decades. The number of never married women grew from about 20% in 1950 to over 30% in 2022. The percentage of married women has declined from almost 70% in 1950 to under 50% today. Not just that, it turns out that the single ladies, they have decided that they are, in fact, their own voter bloc. Pew recently found that, quote, men are far more likely than women to be on the dating market. 61% of single men say they're currently looking for a relationship or dates. Only 38% of single women say they are. And while married men and married women are far more likely than unmarried females to think that women are well treated or equally treated, it turns out that single women, discontented younger single women, are developing something of a group consciousness, according to Kotkin and Abrams. Nearly 2/3 of women under 30 see what happens to other women as critical to their own lives. Among women over 50, this mindset shrinks to less than half. In other words, if you are an older married woman, you tend to see yourself in the context of your family. And if you're an unmarried young single woman, you tend to see a certain level of female solidarity, which, again, makes some sense because when you are a single sort of atomized individual of any sort, you're going to tend to try to find a community of like-minded people. So as that ideology grows and as that constituency grows, it tends to form its own voter bloc. As AEI writes, the key driver of these attitudes may be universities, where feminist ideology often holds powerful sway. Women now predominate on college campuses. In the late 1960s, there were about 39% of college graduates. Now there are about 59% of college graduates. The percentage of full-time female professors has risen dramatically. At the full professor level, the percentage has grown by roughly 1/3. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, the number of women in gender studies degree in the United States has increased by more than 300% since 1990. Married people account for 77% of all homeowners. Married women do better professionally and economically. Those without spouses, in terms of the rate of marriage, have declined by 15% over the past 4 decades, and single-parent households do far worse than that. So it turns out that economically speaking, married women tend to do better than single women. So what you have here is a disaffected constituency the Democratic Party is honing in on like a laser beam. And they are doing this with Kamala Harris's presidential aspirations. They're doing this in a couple of different parts. One, they are trying to find white men who are going to pay homage to Kamala Harris as a woman to make all the single ladies feel really good. And then they're trying to find white women who are willing to pay homage to Kamala Harris as a black woman. This is full intersectionality on display in the Kamala Harris campaign. So if you like what you're seeing in the campaign, get ready for that in the presidency. Intersectionality, which again is the theory that everyone is describable by their group characteristics, and we can then rank how we ought to treat people based on their level of victimization, based on group characteristics. So for example, white woman, more victimized than white man. Black woman, more victimized than white woman. And that means that a white woman can't speak to a black woman and a white man can't speak to a white woman. If you like that in the campaign, get ready for that in the presidency, because this is absolutely what Kamala Harris's candidacy stands for. On a political level, this also means that what the Kamala Harris campaign is attempting to do by breaking apart all of these groups, and this is what they've done. They have like black, gay, and queer men for Kamala Harris. And last night, they had a group called White Dudes for Kamala. At a big meeting, White Dudes for Kamala. Some like 30,000 men showed up on this Zoom call. White Dudes for Kamala. And what it really was not a bunch of people who are just supportive of Kamala Harris. It was a struggle session in which white dudes declared themselves subservient to both women and also to black women, because this is the essence of intersectionality. So every speaker was an upper class, college educated, or extraordinarily wealthy Hollywood liberal talking about their privilege and how, because of their privilege, they had to demonstrate to the world that Kamala Harris was the candidate for them. Not because she is well qualified, not because she is amazing at her job, not because they agree with her policies, but because it is just so important, based on intersectional characteristics, to support Kamala Harris. White Dudes for Kamala. It is kind of a fake, because it's not really about white dudes at all. Sort of like the stability of the United States dollar. See, since 1974, Saudi Arabia has sold oil solely in American dollars, which was huge for our global economic dominance. Now they would like other options. If there's less demand for the US dollar, what happens to its value? It's for reasons like this I feel it's important to diversify some of your savings into gold. You can do that with the help of Birch Gold. Right now, qualifying purchases by July 31st are eligible to get a one-of-a-kind, limited edition Golden Truth Bomb. The only way to claim your eligibility is by texting BEN to 989898. Protect your savings by diversifying away from the US dollar with gold. Text BEN to 989898. Birch Gold will help you convert an old IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold for no money out of pocket. Right now, qualifying purchases will get a limited edition Golden Truth Bomb. Text BEN to 989898. That's BEN to 989898 today. Diversification matters, particularly in uncertain times. Can you remember the last time things were this uncertain? So diversification might be a smart thing to do. Well, I can talk to my friends over at Birch Gold right now. All you have to do to get started is text BEN to 989898. Again, that's BEN to 989898 today. And special purchases get a limited edition Golden Truth Bomb. They were simping for Kamala. That's what this White Dudes for Harris was. Now, that is not an outreach strategy for blue-collar men. This is why you have seen the entire political conversation shift from Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, down to like Georgia, Arizona, North Carolina. The reason is because the states where this is likely to play are states with large cities, with a lot of single women living in them, because single women tend to congregate, generally speaking, in bigger cities, and also more racially diverse states, because they're hoping to drive out minority turnout for Kamala Harris. She polls better with minorities than Joe Biden did. She polls worse with rural whites than Joe Biden did. So there's been an attempt to shift the map. So what is this White Dudes for Kamala thing about? What this White Dudes for Kamala thing is about it is certainly not about reaching out to white dudes. That is actually not what it is about. For public consumption, it is about reaching out to single ladies. It is about establishing a hierarchy within the Kamala Harris campaign where white dudes are going to come on Game of Thrones style bended knee to plead for their lives with the kingdom of Kamala. That is what this was. It was a full-scale Maoist struggle session last night in the White Dudes for Harris Zoom call. So here was the White Dudes for Harris organizer, a guy named Ross Morales Roquetto, talking about masculinity. Now, just ask yourself, is this designed to reach out to the factory worker in Michigan? Is this designed to reach out to the fracking specialist in Pennsylvania? Or is this designed to reach out to all the single ladies? Here we go.
Masculinity as a trope has been co-opted by the MAGA right into something that feeds into and exacerbates the loneliness epidemic, as well as the mental health crisis that many face that end up leading to really destructive behaviors. We aren't the only ones that are hurt by these things. Black and brown people, LGBTQIA plus people, especially trans women and indigenous people, and, all sorts of other folks in our society who've been historically and often still today are marginalized and being hurt, demonized, and marginalized even further.
Okay, is that designed to reach out to blue-collar white voters? I think not. Is that even designed to reach out to dudes? That entire diatribe is about how masculinity, traditionally speaking, protector and provider masculinity is bad and wrong and victimizes the marginalized and all the rest of this sort of stuff. And this is the same campaign that's busy calling J.D. Vance and Donald Trump weird, and they have Man Bun over here telling you that traditional masculinity is actually the direst threat to people who are outside the norm and therefore must be rethought. This is white dudes, white simps for Kamala. over here. Josh Gad, who is most famous for being the voice of Olaf in the Frozen movies. Josh Gad was out there suggesting that we need a female president because, again, he's weeping with his daughters unless there's a female president.
I'm a white dude. That much you can probably tell by now. But I also happen to be a father of 2 girls. I have a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old. And I'm not sure if you guys can recall that feeling you had on the night of Tuesday, November 8th, 2016. I stood over my kid's bed and I wept. I wept because I felt like I let them down. I wept because they had the chance and we had the chance to have a female president for the first time in our lives and in the history of this nation.
Nothing says masculinity quite like weeping over your children's beds because Hillary Clinton didn't become president of the United States. Not because he thought that Hillary Clinton was better qualified, but because for some odd reason, he thinks that it is very important to his daughters that Hillary Clinton be president. Now, I also have 2 daughters. And you know what I don't care about? And you know what they don't care about? Whether there's a female president. They don't care about that because that's a stupid way to think about the presidency. It's really stupid. Looking at the physical characteristics of the president as opposed to, their capacity to do the job is ridiculous. I'd be perfectly happy. I'd be overjoyed with a female president who shared my values. And I would be perfectly beside myself with a female president who did not. Because that's how you should think about politics. But again, this isn't about driving male votes out. This is about driving female votes out. Again, the reason for that is because Kamala Harris has one issue where she has an advantage against Donald Trump. She's running behind him on economy. She's running behind him on immigration. She's running behind him on foreign policy. She's running behind him on pretty much everything, crime too. There's one area where she's running ahead of Donald Trump consistently. That's abortion. That's abortion. So this entire campaign is going to be about lady parts and abortion. And you need to pay homage to Kamala Harris because she is a woman. And that's what White Dudes for Kamala is about. It's about reinforcing single female solidarity with Kamala Harris because married females tend not to vote to the left, mainly because, again, they are more family oriented. They vote in the interest of their families as opposed to a constituency interest group called the single ladies. Here's Josh Groban doing the same. And again, it's hard to watch this sort of stuff. It's very difficult to watch this sort of stuff because it is so just stomach turning to watch all of these people just sacrifice their own dignity on behalf of Kamala Harris. It's just undignified. Like, as a man, it is an undignified thing for men to talk about how they are weeping because a female wasn't elected president, or they were just beside themselves because masculinity somehow alienates the marginalized, that your core role as protector and provider alienates the marginalized. Here's Josh Groban, voice of an angel, saying really dumb crap.
I am proud to raise my hand and to say that this is something that I believe so fully in. I'm so excited by the galvanizing of the Harris campaign. And I'm so grateful every single day to the people in my life and in the marginalized communities that educate me every single day, that this is a constant education.
It's a constant education. He has to be educated, you see, because he's a white dude. And white dudes got to be educated. Well, if the White Dudes for Kamala have their way, she'll be elected president of the United States. And that would mean, of course, climbing crime rates, which is why now you might want to think about getting a Berna. I'm about as pro-Second Amendment as it gets, but the thought of using lethal force, it's not like the ideal if you can avoid it. Also, God forbid, you don't want to make a mistake and use deadly force against somebody you didn't need to. Introducing the Berna Ungun, the non-lethal self-defense platform. Lightweight, simple to use. It uses an easy-to-load 5-round magazine and is powered by an 8-gram CO2 cartridge. Berna launchers fire a 68 caliber chemical-filled projectile using patented pull-pierce technology, where the CO2 canister is only punctured on the first trigger pull. That means your launcher is always at the ready. It's capable of incapacitating an attacker for over 30 minutes. It's accurate and effective at over 60 feet. It requires no permits, no background checks. It is interstate travel friendly. With Berna, you will be prepared to defend. The Berna is a safer, more sensible alternative that could potentially save lives on both sides, protecting both user and aggressor. Visit Berna.com/Ben for 10% off your purchase. That's BYRNA.com/Ben. Check out the latest news about Berna. That's BYRNA.com/Ben. Again, Berna.com/Ben for 10% off your purchase. They have to bend the knee to Joffrey over here. You must, or rather, Cersei Lannister, you got to bend the knee. It's very important. And if you do not bend the knee, then you have not been simpy enough. Here is Bradley Whitford, who we last saw on The West Wing. So it's been a couple decades since we cared what this dude had to say. Here he is talking about Donald Trump.
If there is a God, she's a terrible writer. I mean, I have not been able to, if I walked into the West Wing writer's room and said, okay, this is going to be our Republican candidate, a felon, an adjudicated.
Why would you possibly listen to these people about politics? They don't got a brain in their head. Again, I think many of these people are well-intentioned. I know many of the people in Hollywood who are like this. In fact, Sean Astin was on this call. Okay, I've met Sean Astin. I was on his podcast maybe 10 years ago at this point. Super nice person, super genuine, knows literally nothing about politics, just does not know things. He's a big Democrat donor, does not know anything about politics, kind of an innocent person, and so buys whatever the left wing tells him. And here he was doing the same sort of routine.
Get the placemat out when you're with a kindergartner and you're looking at the placemat of the presidents. Not one woman. And the other side, they try and take everything that's good about us and demean it. Kamala Harris smiles. She laughs. She dances. She has joy. She's alive. And they try and ridicule her for that. And they try and undermine us for that. This is a serious person who can prosecute a tough case against people when she's in the Senate. Those are some of the most exciting moments during that awful time, was watching this senator take them to task. Kavanaugh and some of those other people that I watched her fully prepared for her moments. So exquisite with her use of language. Such seriousness of purpose that she has. Full package.
Dude, stick to carrying Frodo up the hill. Like, seriously. Stick to playing one play in football in a movie, because that is some bad. Don't you understand? You can't mock her laugh because she's alive. She's filled with joy. She's like a wonderful princess bursting forth in song. Oh, Kamala. Again, is any of this directed toward males? It's white dudes for Kamala. How many white dudes watch this? And they're like, you know what? I'm on board. I'm totally on board. The energy that is coming off white dudes for Kamala is the same energy as the losers who go to left-wing rallies in order to get laid. That is the energy that comes off of white dudes for Kamala. It's a bunch of guys who really want to be in good with all of the cultural powers that be. And they don't necessarily really believe all this stuff, or maybe they do, but they're really trying to convince themselves super hard. At the very least, they have a very passing knowledge of the politics. Jeff Bridges, for example. So we are going to listen to Jeff Bridges about politics because one time he played the Big Lebowski.
I accepted the invitation. I was brought to the party not so much as being white, and I certainly am, but because I'm a dude, So a friend sent me this email today with your hat on there. And I said, oh, I got to have one of those. I qualify, man. I'm white, I'm a dude, and I'm for Harris.
Oh, well, I mean, that does explain it. I mean, I still don't understand why your opinion is particularly relevant. I don't think you actually know things, but sure. I think that sure. Then Pete Buttigieg shows up. And when you think about the core of traditional masculinity, Pete Buttigieg comes to mind. Dude loves choo-choo trains, loves airplanes, bad at both, is Secretary of Transportation, took a 2-month paternity leave so that he could help his husband recover from childbirth. And no one missed him. And here he is explaining that abortion is actually great for men. Right? We used to call this perspective evil, that abortion is great for men. It's great when women can kill the baby you made so you don't have to have responsibility for that baby. It is amazing that this sort of line just spills forth from a potential vice presidential candidate.
I'm so glad she has made freedom the theme of her campaign, because I think in so many ways that's what's at stake. And yes, women's freedom is Exhibit A after Donald Trump demolished the right to choose. But of course, men are also more free in a country where we have a president who stands up for things like access to abortion care. Men are more free.
Men are more free. That's true. Abortion does make men more free to stoop women and then not support them or their potential children because the baby can just be killed. the point that I'm making here is that this entire campaign is built around the premise that single women will carry Kamala Harris to victory. Now, there's something that is worth noting here. In 2022, single women did show up in outsized numbers in particular states where abortion was on the ballot in order to vote for the Democrats. And it broke the Republican momentum. But Republicans did end up winning the House. So the notion that single ladies can carry Kamala Harris to victory while they alienate literally everyone else, that is an interesting bet. It is a very interesting bet. I don't know if those stats pay off, particularly when you have the simultaneously alienating white dudes, white simps for Kamala over here, suggesting that men have to sit and listen because men should not have perspectives. White men cannot have perspectives. They have to sit and they have to hear and they have to listen and they have to understand their traditional masculine virtues are actually fallacies and lies and very bad for the country. And meanwhile, you have the next group up the totem pole in the intersectional Olympics over here. You have white women for Kamala. Karens for Kamala, they also had their own Zoom meeting. And the Karens for Kamala are some of the most off-putting human beings on the planet. Not because they're ladies, but because they're obnoxious. Just awful. Would you want to have dinner with these ladies? But it's not directed at you. It's directed at getting out the single white college-educated lady vote. You would not want to have dinner with any of these awful, awful people. They're obnoxious. And here's the thing. Even if you did have dinner, would you get the nutrients that you need? Well, I always get the nutrients I need with Balance of Nature. I exercise. I try to get enough sleep. I eat well when I'm traveling. Balance of Nature fits right into my day today and keeps me healthy so I can be on air 24 hours a day covering this election. Imagine trying to eat 31 different fruits and veggies every single day. That sounds miserable and time-consuming. With Balance of Nature fruits and veggies, there's never been a more convenient dietary supplement to ensure you get a wide variety of fruits and veggies every day. Balance of Nature takes fruits and veggies, they freeze-dry them, they turn them into a powder, and then they put them into a capsule. You take your fruit and veggie capsules daily, and your body knows exactly what to do with them. This is also kosher, and that is how I can put them in my protein smoothies to keep the gun show going strong. Go to balanceofnature.com, use promo code Shapiro for 35% off your first order as a preferred customer, plus get a free bottle of fiber and spice. That's balanceofnature.com, promo code Shapiro. So Benjamin Franklin once said that beer is the way that we know that God loves us. Vegetables are the way that we know that God might be indifferent, but Balance of Nature fixes that problem. Balanceofnature.com, use promo code Shapiro, 35% off your first order as a preferred customer, plus that free bottle of fiber and spice. This is the coalition Democrats keep doubling down on. They are playing the Barack Obama 2012 campaign. I've said many times on the program, you know my theory. 2012 broke the country because Barack Obama ran as a unifier in 2008, and then in 2012, he decided that he was going to run by cobbling together heavy minority turnout and college-educated white ladies and alienating everyone else. Hillary ran that same campaign in 2016. She lost. In 2020, Joe Biden didn't quite run that campaign because COVID screwed everything all up, and there was all this absentee voting, and the number of voters in the sheer population pool went up by something like 22 million votes. But they're going to keep running this play over and over and over again. It's a bold move, Cott, and we'll see if it works for them. Here is white women for Kamala, a lady named Ariel Fodor, who also calls herself Mrs. Frazzled. We'll get to know her better in just a moment.
This is a really important time, and we all need to use our voices and influence for the greater good, no matter who you are. You are all influencers in some way. As white women, we need to use our privilege to make positive changes. If you find yourself talking over or speaking for BIPOC individuals, or God forbid, correcting them, just take a beat.
God forbid.
And instead, we can put our listening ears on. So do learn from and amplify the voices of those who have been historically marginalized, and use the privilege you have in order to push for systemic change.
Again, notice the intersectional hierarchy. White men at the bottom, because white men are bad. Masculinity is bad. Pay homage to Kamala. Then you got white women. Not as bad as white men, but also a little bad because they're white. In this particular context, we're going to pretend that white women for Kamala actually means women, because otherwise the word has no definition. We should get to know, by the way, Ariel Fodor here. Who is this lady who's lecturing all of the white ladies on how they can't correct BIPOC women or some such nonsense? Here she is. This is some of her role as Mrs. Frazzled. That is what she calls herself on the interwebs, talking about gentle parenting your uncle who can't bear to see a man in nail polish.
Oh no, catch a bubble, Uncle Norm. I think you said an inside thought out loud. Is him wearing nail polish a big problem or a little problem? Macaroni cheese, everybody freeze. Uncle Don, no one wants to take your gas stove. No, friend, they just want you to know about your gas stove. Do you see how it says natural gas? They just want to put a little warning sticker on your stove so that you know that it actually means methane gas. Yeah, the one making the world warmer. How did you feel about your speech? Oh, I thought it was unique, just like everyone's family is unique and everyone's choices are unique. Catch a bubble. It is important to be kind, even when someone thinks differently than you do.
I love that last line. It's important to be kind even when someone thinks differently than you do, which is why she's speaking to people who have a different perspective, like they are 5-year-old children with a mental disability. The Republicans just play these people on a loop. Honestly, just play clips from White Dudes for Kamala on a loop. Play Ariel Fodor on a loop. Play Angela Belcamino on a loop. Another one of these single female influencers who's declaring her allegiance to Kamala Harris. She says, imagine being 42, child-free, stress-free, and being this happy. The right hates this. This is supposed to be a rip on J.D. Vance, suggesting that actually happiness very often lies in family and children. Here she is dancing around like a 16-year-old girl, but she's 42 and lonely. She's dancing around by herself, wearing a cutoff t-shirt and like short jean shorts. This entire tweet is just the Nathan Fielder tweet. Here I am having an amazing time with my friends. They're just off camera. That is what this is. It's amazing. But there is a strategy. It's not by accident that Democrats are doing this. It's not by accident that Kamala Harris is doing this. They're steering directly into the single female vote. That's why, again, they're focusing on J.D. Vance. It's why they're focusing on abortion, because that's the only advantage they have in this election cycle. Every other major demographic group, major here I'm talking about 30% and up of the population, seems to be voting for Donald Trump. When it comes to single women, particularly single college-educated women, they need a heavy turnout from that group. That is why they're directing everything toward this group. But they can alienate everybody else on this basis. It turns out that most people find this kind of stuff obnoxious. Well, it turns out that Kamala Harris does not have like an amazing strategy, but I'll tell you what is an amazing strategy. If you're a busy person, you have to have a mattress that works for you. I cannot keep up with my day if I don't get a decent night's sleep. That is why I appreciate my Helix mattress. Helix harnesses years of mattress expertise to offer a truly elevated sleep experience. The Helix Elite Collection includes 6 different mattress models, each tailored for specific sleep positions and firmness preferences. If you're nervous about buying a mattress online, you really don't have to be. Helix has a sleep quiz. It matches your body type and sleep preferences to the perfect mattress, because why would you buy a mattress made for somebody else? I took that Helix quiz. I was matched with a firm but breathable mattress. I love it. My wife loves it. We are big Helix fans at the Shapiro household. Helix has a 10-year warranty. You have to try it out for 100 nights risk-free. They'll even pick it up for you if you don't love it, but you will. Helix's financing options and flexible payment plans make it so a great night's sleep is never far away. For a limited time, Helix is offering up to 30% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. Just head on over to helixsleep.com/Ben. That's helixsleep.com/Ben. It's their best offer yet. It's not going to last long. With Helix, better sleep starts right now. Go get a mattress made just for you. helixsleep.com/Ben. And again, get up to 30% off all mattress orders plus 2 free pillows for our listeners. Most people don't want to hear Josh Groban lecturing them about the marginalization of BIPOC queer men. Most people don't want to hear Angela Belcamino lecture them about the joys of single living as an aspect of politics. There is a norm in the United States, and Democrats have decided that they're more marginalized than norm, so they are going to create the coalition of the marginalized and pseudo-oppressed, and they're going to run that to victory. But that is not an amazing strategy, actually. It's not an amazing strategy. Now, I don't think that Kamala Harris is putting all her money on that strategy. I think she's also putting a lot of her money and a lot of her credibility on just lying. I think that her campaign is going to be about completely recasting her entire political worldview as non-radical and non-far left, which requires her to lie and lie like a rug. Here, for example, is the new Kamala Harris ad. She's going to drop like $50 million behind this ad and try to drop it in a bunch of swing states. Here is Kamala Harris's new ad. Notice that she tries to bring herself off as an aggressive right-wing prosecutor in this ad.
The one thing Kamala Harris has always been: fearless. As a prosecutor, she put murderers and abusers behind bars. As California's attorney general, she went after the big banks and won $20 billion for homeowners.
Except the ones who were run by her friends.
She took on the big drug companies to cap the cost of insulin for seniors. Because
Actually,
Kamala
Trump capped
Harris
the cost
has
of insulin.
always known who she represents.
This campaign is about who we fight for. We believe in a future where every person has the opportunity not just to get by, but to get ahead. Where every senior can retire with dignity. But Donald Trump wants to take our country backward, to give tax breaks to billionaires and big corporations and end the Affordable Care Act. But we are not going back. I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
And now remember, Barack Obama's 2012 campaign slogan was forward. So when she says we're not going back, we're going forward. That's the implication, obviously. There's nothing in that ad about her actual political positions because she's incredibly radical. She's incredibly radical. In fact, here is the Donald Trump campaign ad that is now going out with about $12 million behind it in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, Arizona, Nevada, and Wisconsin about Kamala Harris.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
This is America's border czar, and she's failed us. Under Harris, over 10 million illegally here. 250,000 Americans dead from fentanyl. Brutal migrant crimes. And ISIS now here.
Do you have any plans to visit the border? You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. I mean, I don't understand the point that you're making.
Kamala Harris, failed, weak, dangerously liberal.
That is right. That is right. Also, the RNC has been using Dave McCormick's ad that puts together all of her far-left positions. Republicans are going to hammer on her on this, and they should. And they should. Her oddities of personality, her weird quirks, all of that stuff is secondary to the fact that she is a far-left, radical leftist who mirrors, but worse, all of the Biden policy preferences. James Carville, who has been the only voice of reason in the Democratic Party this entire election cycle, he says she's going to get absolutely slaughtered on her positions.
There was no policy that anyone was pushing. There was no particular group that was behind this. It was just a general feeling that people wanted a different choice than Donald Trump and President Biden. And they got it. And there is some good, now look, she's going to get slaughtered. They're coming out. They're coming, and this is just part of no different than it was any other time. And they have got to get up and get ready, and they've got to be able to defend and attack at the same time. And there's going to be a time of struggle of definition as to who Vice President Harris is.
And here's the problem. Vice President Harris has no core. The only principles that she's held throughout her career are on the far left. She pretends every so often to be non-progressive for political purposes. So she did this when she was running for San Francisco DA, and then she did it again when she was running for Attorney General. She pretended to be a moderate, but in the end, she is, in fact, a radical leftist. And that is coming out purely and truly, even as she tries to walk back every single one of these positions. We'll get to more on that in just a second. First, Jeremy's Razors Christmas and July sale ends today. It's your last chance to get 25% off all razor trial kits at jeremysrazors.com. That includes the Precision 5 razor. It's been radically redesigned for an exceptionally smooth and close shave. Get the deal that couldn't wait for Christmas before it's gone. Go to jeremysrazors.com for 25% off today. Okay, meanwhile, Kamala Harris is showing every single day that she is a radical, and she's actually running away from her own positions in order to avoid it. Even the New York Times is taking note today. Quote, why the Kamala Harris of 4 years ago could haunt her in 2024. She ran to the left as progressive ideas dominated the last competitive Democratic primary. Now, in a tough general election, Republicans are digging up her old stances. Ooh, there's that Republican pouncing again. Well, she is now moving away from pretty much every single thing she ever said on any issue, with very few exceptions. So, she had pledged to ban fracking, as we've talked about. The Harris campaign then announced on Friday that she no longer wanted to ban fracking. She's also changing her positions on a wide variety of issues. Apparently, she now backs the Biden administration's budget request for increased funding for border enforcement, which she used to oppose. No longer supports a single-payer health insurance program because she said in 2020 she would abolish private health insurance, and echoed Biden's call for banning assault weapons, but not a mandatory buyback requirement, which is what she had pushed in 2020. So she is rejecting pretty much every position she ever took. She is a flip-flopper, in other words. She's a liar. She is Kamala liar. She's incredibly dishonest about all of her political positions. Now, there are a few that she's sticking to. The few that she is sticking to are the union SOPs, because she wants the union vote. So that means that, for example, during her remarks at the American Federation of Teachers National Convention last week, Vice President Harris pledged to sign the Freelance Busting Protecting the Right to Organize PRO Act into law if elected this November. The PRO Act is a radical union act that effectively forces people to unionize. It weakens right-to-work laws, which allow people to work without being members of the union. It is the single most anti-worker act that Democrats have put up. She's supporting that because, of course, she wants the unions in her pocket, and she understands that Trump is a threat because many union members actually do not like Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. She's also consistently to the left when it comes to Hamas. When it comes to the Middle East, she has taken the position repeatedly that Israel is to blame for human rights atrocities and abuses, and that diplomacy is the only answer to, for example, Hezbollah killing Druze children in the Golan Heights. Amit Segal, who's a columnist in Israel, major political commentator in Israel, has a piece in the Wall Street Journal talking about what Kamala Harris just did last week when she did a press conference where she ripped into Israel. He said, Vice President Kamala Harris became the de facto nominee and gave Hamas an important gift. Never mind her childish boycott of Benjamin Netanyahu's address to Congress last Wednesday. Why was it necessary to side with the Palestinian narrative that places the blame for the war on Israel? She said, quote, we cannot look away in the face of these tragedies. We cannot allow ourselves to become numb to the suffering. I will not be silent. This is a direct threat to Israel. If it continues the war, a war the Biden-Harris administration itself supported and called just. Ms. Harris, as Amit Segal writes, in a recent interview said she was hearing stories about people in Gaza eating animal feed and grass. He said she's apparently unaware that food prices are significantly lower than in Israel. Is there any other war in the past century where one side regularly supplied food and goods to the enemy's civilians and been attacked by the White House for doing so? And meanwhile, the Biden-Harris administration, which has turned into the Harris administration, let's just dispense with the pleasantries. Joe Biden is no longer president of the United States. He pretends to be president for the cameras because it would be humiliating for him to full-scale step down. And they're going to let the old man live out his retirement fantasies, basically being irrelevant. But in reality, this place is now run by Kamala Harris, who's assumed not just the presidential nominee mantle, but also the actual presidency of the United States without actually saying so. The Biden administration said that worries about a wider conflict between Israel and Hezbollah were exaggerated, which is an amazing statement given the fact that, again, 12 children were just murdered by Hezbollah. 12 Druze Arab children were murdered by Hezbollah in the Golan Heights. And the Biden administration is like, why is that a big deal? Who cares about that? Who cares about it? Meanwhile, members of the Harris team are trying to sell the idea that she's still pro-Israel. This, of course, is ridiculous. Scott Galloway tried to make that case. Giant fail.
And here's the bottom line on Biden-Harris as relates to Israel. No one has been a more steadfast ally of Israel than Biden-Harris. Within days of October 7th, the Hamas was hoping to inspire a multi-front war. The Biden-Harris administration immediately deployed 2 carrier strike forces and told Iran and its proxies to sit the down. Nobody has been stronger on Israel than Biden and Harris. And all this tough macho talk about the notion that finish the job. Well, guess what? In addition to winning this war, which we will, we need an enduring, lasting peace. And who do you trust to figure out the nuance and the diplomacy of a lasting peace?
This is a joke. This is a joke. I'm sorry. Ask the Israelis. Literally everyone in Israeli politics knows this. Everyone, left to right, is begging for Trump. They are begging for Trump. Biden has been awful for Israel. He started off fine. We talked about it at the time. And then he quickly moved into the Palestinians are suffering people who deserve their own state, despite the fact that 80% of them support Hamas on October 7th. He moved into that camp real fast. They've been slow walking actual weaponry in the middle of a war to an American ally fighting a terrorist group and demanding that the government of Israel be supplanted and that Hamas remain, effectively speaking. Truly amazing stuff there. And Harris is sticking to that left-wing policy. Another area where she's apparently sticking close to the formal president of the United States is a new call to completely destroy the Supreme Court. So Joe Biden put out an op-ed in the Washington Post, clearly not written by him because he can no longer actually write words, in which he suggested that the Supreme Court has to be completely overthrown because they're doing things he doesn't like. So let's be real about this. For my entire lifetime and that of my parents, the Supreme Court has been effectively a left-wing tool of jurisprudence. For about 4 years, it has not. And immediately the Democrats are like, hey, that institution, we should just completely burn it down. So Joe Biden, he suggests a bunch of changes to the Supreme Court. He wants a constitutional amendment called the No One is Above the Law Amendment. It would make clear there is no immunity for crimes a former president committed while in office. Now, that is ridiculous. That's ridiculous because there has to be some immunity for the president of the United States. Otherwise, Joe Biden will be brought up on many, many charges. There are many things you could bring Joe Biden up on, from corruption to his prosecution of foreign policy that ends with dead Americans. Then he says we have to have term limits for Supreme Court justices. a rich odor coming from the rankly dead president of the United States. His corpse is moldering, and he's calling for term limits for people younger than he is. Finally, he wants a binding code of conduct for the Supreme Court. Implemented by whom? Implemented by whom? The executive, who will just invoke that to get rid of justices that he doesn't particularly like? Here is Joe Biden trying to suggest these words out of a face hole that no longer functions properly. He says, we need these bold proposals.
The court is not self-policing. The court is not dealing with the obvious conflicts of interest. We need a mandatory code of ethics for the Supreme Court, and we need it now. My fellow Americans, based on all my experience, I'm certain we need these reforms. We need these reforms to restore trust in the courts, preserve the system of checks and balances that are vital to our democracy.
Hey, none of this is going to happen. All of it's ridiculous. Biden is proposing it, and Harris is backing it. Here's a statement from Vice President Kamala Harris on Supreme Court reforms. I point out at this point, Kamala Harris has done 0 major interviews, 0, since she was announced as the nominee last week. It has been fully a week and a half since Joe Biden dropped out of the race and Kamala Harris effectively became the Democratic nominee. She has done 0 press conferences, 0 interviews, taken 0 questions. Instead, she's putting out formal statements. She's running Joe Biden's basement strategy just with rallies. It's a smart strategy because the more people see of her, the more they dislike her. I'm amused by the idea that she's radically jumped in popularity. Oh my God, she's so popular now. No, she isn't. She went from 35% popularity to 44% popularity. I may not be amazing at math, but I do know that 44 is less than 50. A majority of Americans still disapprove of Kamala Harris. They don't like her all that much. She put out a statement saying, quote, in the course of our nation's history, trust in the Supreme Court of the United States has been critical to achieving equal justice under law. President Biden and I strongly believe the American people must have confidence in the Supreme Court. Yet today, there's a clear crisis of confidence facing the Supreme Court as its fairness has been called into question after numerous ethics scandals and decision after decision overturning long-standing precedent. It's the last part that matters. They got a bunch of decisions they don't like. Therefore, it's time to burn down the Supreme Court. These are the people who say Donald Trump is a threat to democracy and the institutions, and they are ready to full-on burn down the Supreme Court because they didn't get what they wanted, like children who are taking their ball home after everybody else is playing with it. That is why President Biden and I are calling on Congress to pass important reforms. In our democracy, no one should be above the law, says Kamala Harris. Just ridiculous. Ridiculous stuff. So again, she's just as radical as Joe Biden. She's more radical than Joe Biden in a wide variety of ways. And that should be what Donald Trump is focusing on. Now, I think Trump is doing that. They are putting out ads to that effect. One mistake that Trump could make here is playing into her shift in position. The problem with Kamala Harris is that she's too far left, not that she is too far right on prosecuting criminals. I understand that there are all these sort of weird, attractive targets that Republicans like from time to time, where we can point out Democrat hypocrisy. Let me just point out, the problem with Kamala Harris is not that she, quote unquote, locked up too many black men, like Tulsi Gabbard said. The problem with Kamala Harris is she let out many, many criminals when she was the Attorney General of the state of California. Thousands of criminals. There was a massive lab failure in which a member of the crime lab in California was stealing cocaine from the actual evidence lockers. And this tainted a bunch of cases. Instead of her attempting to adjudicate those cases, because she presided over it, instead she just released all the criminals. Check out our series Scamala, available at Daily Wire Plus for all the details on that. Donald Trump should not be steering down the she was mean to black men routine here, because again, I think that plays into her tough on crime nonsense.
She claims now she's tough. She's tough on crime. She was a tough prosecutor. Never the borders are.
She was a bad prosecutor. She was a prosecutor of black people. She put thousands and thousands of black people in jail over marijuana. But when it came to big crime, murders and everything else, she was weak.
Okay, that last part is the part he should focus on. That's what he should focus on. Because Kamala Harris, the radical, is a person no one wants to see as president of the United States. Now, the Kamala Harris campaign is fighting back on the truth that she is a flip-flopping radical by attempting to present a moderate face via a VP pick. That is probably why the frontrunners in the VP race right now for the Democrats are people like Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, who is widely perceived as a moderate from a swing state, or perhaps Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan. They both tried to make their pitch for why they should be VP last night. Here was Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania. He was making the case that Donald Trump is afraid to debate Kamala. This is one of the most annoying lines. It's super, super annoying. And Kamala Harris is now suggesting that Donald Trump is chicken because he's not agreeing to the same terms that he gave Joe Biden. Now, I noticed that Joe Biden is not Kamala Harris. One is an old, dead white man, and one is the brand spanking, shiny new Democratic presidential nominee. Obviously, you're not going to accept the same conditions because they are completely different candidates. But the idea being promoted here by the Kamala Harris campaign and by her surrogates is that Donald Trump is somehow afraid of her. He's not afraid of her. He took a bullet to the ear. I don't think that Donald Trump is afraid of much. Donald Trump will debate her. It'll be fascinating. But here's Josh Shapiro trying to play this game.
He's not just afraid to debate her because he knows she's going to kick his ass in the debate. She is a skilled debater. But he's afraid to debate her because he's afraid of his record. He's afraid of having to defend a record that has been really dangerous and destructive.
And so that's Josh Shapiro doing his audition. Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, she did her audition as well, suggesting that we need everybody at the table, including cat lovers and dog lovers. Again, this is the rip on J.D. Vance, is the cat lady thing. You're going to try and stick this to him like toilet paper to a shoe walking out of a restroom. Here we go.
Now, I got to take a minute to talk about the guy who joined his ticket a couple weeks ago. Oh, you heard of him, did you? J.D. Vance, yeah. He's really made his values clear lately. He does not see women as equals. He does not want everyone to have a seat at the table. He's scared of us. Because Democrats, we want everyone to have a seat at the table. I mean, even cat lovers and dog lovers alike.
Again, she's auditioning. If they're trying to drive out the single lady vote, then Gretchen Whitmer would be sort of the out-of-the-box pick. A lot of people are saying Josh Shapiro. Problem is that he's a Jew. Democrats got a problem with that in this day and age. So Gretchen Whitmer is a very likely VP pick, even though she's already said she doesn't want it. She's the governor of Michigan. She's clearly auditioning. Michigan is a state that Kamala Harris has to win. It's also a very competitive state because of its demographics. Another candidate that they are thinking about is Tim Walz. I do not think he'll be Tim Walz. Tim Walz, I don't even know why he's being elevated at this point. The Minnesota governor, he doesn't win her estate. He's not a good governor. Minnesota is a poorly governed state under Tim Walz. Also, he has a bunch of statements in the past talking about the magic of socialism.
Don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness. Just do the damn work.
One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness. Well, I mean, killing the kulaks is definitely a form of neighborliness, I suppose. When you kill your neighbors, socialism is just neighborliness. I do not think it'll be him. Roy Cooper, the North Carolina governor, has pulled out of consideration as Harris's running mate. So he was considered a high possibility. The final three seem to be coming down right now to Mark Kelly in Arizona, the senator from Arizona, because it's a swing state, as well as Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan. There's been some weird talk about Senator Gary Peters. I don't really see what that brings that Whitmer does not. And Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania. All of them attempts to moderate. This is why I don't think Walz is going to be the candidate. Because, again, Kamala Harris has to lie about her positioning, and Democrats have to keep saying weird over and over and over. Because the reality is, as we spoke about yesterday, they're weird. I'm sorry, Kamala Harris is weird. Their program is weird. This is a group of people who believe that there is no such thing worth upholding as the traditional family, that all forms of lifestyle are equally moral and decent and good for society, to the extent that Kamala Harris is appearing on RuPaul's Drag Race. And they are talking about how it is perfectly normal, decent, and good to trans the children. And we're supposed to believe the Republicans are weird. The talking points went out. Here's the idea, again, that Trump and Vance are weird when Kamala Harris is busily dancing it up with dudes wearing dresses.
As weird and creepy as J.D. Vance.
Super weird idea from J.D. Vance.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's quite weird. They're just plain weird.
Just plain weird.
Just plain weird.
That stuff is weird. They come across weird, and then they start being weird. Yeah, they're weird.
Being a really weird.
He's such a weirdo.
Donald Trump and his weirdo running mate are weird. Deeply and profoundly weird.
They are weird. These Republicans just being weird, it's just weird. It's really weird.
Republican weirdness goes even deeper.
He said a lot of things that are weird, a weird style that he brings.
So much weirdness, so much weirdness. Hillary Clinton also tweeted out about weirdness. She's one to talk. Hillary the weirdo Clinton. Quote, if Republican leaders don't enjoy being called weird, creepy, and controlling, they could try not being weird, creepy, and controlling, says the lady who went after all of the women that her husband stooped while he was president of the United States and governor of Arkansas. When I think weird, creepy, and controlling, I definitely don't think of Hillary Clinton, who is look in the dictionary under weird, creepy, and controlling, and Hillary Clinton's picture appears next to all three. Now, Donald Trump is out in defense of J.D. Vance. He says what J.D. is saying is pretty obvious. He's just trying to defend families.
He loves family. It's very important to him. He grew up in a very interesting family situation, and he feels family is good. And I don't think there's anything wrong in saying that. Now, they took that as an indication that people that don't have families, look, I could see.
It's an easy opening, right?
It's so crazy.
Easy.
But I know so many people, they never met the right person, male or female, they just never met the right person. The Democrats are good at spinning things differently from what they were. All he said is, he does like, for him, he likes family.
So that is the pitch that Trump is making. The fact that he's on the defensive is a problem for Trump, obviously. And now the media are they are on Vance because they can't be on Trump. There's nothing for them to do about Trump. Trump is what Trump is. They are attempting to basically focus all of their ire and fire at J.D. Vance because he's the fresh meat. So they're now focusing in on apparently a report that he privately told donors that running against Vice President Harris instead of President Biden made the race more challenging. Quote, all of us were hit with a little bit of a political sucker punch. He said this July 21st, according to a recording of his remarks at a Saturday fundraiser in Minnesota. The bad news is Kamala Harris does not have the same baggage as Joe Biden because whatever we might have to say, Kamala is a lot younger, and Kamala Harris is obviously not struggling in the same way that Joe Biden did. Now, I love that this report leaves out, and the good news is, because I'm sure whenever you say the bad news is blah, you always follow that up with, and the good news is, the opposite. They just leave that out to suggest that J.D. Vance and Trump are afraid of Kamala Harris. They should not be. She is an eggshell candidate, eggshell skull candidate. There's a term in tort law for a person who is uniquely vulnerable. And the question is, in tort law, let's say that you're walking around, you're carrying a stick, you hit somebody who has, quote unquote, an eggshell skull that easily caves in. Are you responsible for what happens to that person? Okay, that is Kamala Harris as a candidate. She's an eggshell skull candidate, meaning she is uniquely vulnerable to all of these charges, which is why she is running away from the media. Legitimately running away from the media. Just an enormously fascinating exchange last night on the Twitter sphere from a national political reporter for the Washington Post named Maeve Reston. If Steve Peoples, who is the chief political reporter for AP, said Harris' campaign is blocking reporters from talking to voters outside the press pen here at Whitmer Shapiro event in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. So they literally blocked reporters from talking to people. Maeve Reston said, I can attest this is true. Happened to me here too. Lame. Now question, what? Lame? Okay, so if Donald Trump blocked you from doing basic political coverage, would that be lame or would you be calling him a fascist? This is the way the media are with Kamala Harris. I do not think it can last forever. 3 days in the modern media cycle is way, way, way too long for this to continue this way. Alrighty, guys, coming up, we'll be joined on the line by Megan Basham, Daily Wire culture reporter and author of the brand new book, Shepherds for Sale, How Evangelical Leaders Traded the Truth for a Leftist Agenda. If you're not a member, become a member, use code Shapiro at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click that link in the description and join us.